The text came at 11:47 p.m. 3 words that shattered every rule he'd ever lived by. I need you now. Geraldo Jasper didn't answer personal calls. Ever. He was a mafia boss. Powerful, untouchable, alone by design. But when his housekeeper's message lit up his phone, something inside him broke. 10 minutes later, he was pounding on her door. She opened it drunk, trembling, and raw with a confession that would destroy them both. Because here's what they didn't know yet. Vulnerability was about to become the most dangerous weapon either of them had ever wielded. This is what happened next. You are welcome, my viewers. Thanks for always following up on the channel. Kindly tell us in the comments section the exact time and location you are watching from. We would love to know so we can serve you better. The phone vibrated against the mahogany desk at 11:47 p.m. Geraldo Jasper didn't move. He sat in the leather chair of his downtown penthouse office, a glass of bourbon untouched beside him, his eyes fixed on the city lights bleeding through floor-to-ceiling windows. The phone vibrated again. Persistent. He'd learned long ago not to answer calls after hours unless they came from 5 specific numbers. His underboss, his lawyer, his mother, his sister, and the man who cleaned up problems that couldn't be solved with money. This wasn't one of those numbers. The screen glowed in the darkness. Beatrice Robert. His jaw tightened. He should ignore it. She was his housekeeper, had been for 8 months now, and in all that time she'd never once contacted him outside of work. Never asked for anything. Never overstepped. She showed up at 7 every Monday and Thursday, moved through his like a ghost, left everything pristine, and disappeared by noon. He barely knew her voice. The phone buzzed a 3rd time. A text message. He told himself he wouldn't look. Told himself it was probably nothing. A scheduling conflict, a question about supplies. Told himself that the tight coil of something unfamiliar in his chest was annoyance, not curiosity. He looked anyway. I need you now. 3 words. No punctuation. No explanation. Geraldo stared at the screen until it went dark, then lit it up again with a tap of his thumb. The timestamp read 11:49 p.m. He read the message twice more, searching for context that wasn't there, for a tone he couldn't decipher through pixels and glass. I need you now. No one needed him. People feared him, respected him, owed him, used him, but needed? That was a word reserved for weakness, for people who didn't understand that dependence was a chain you couldn't break once it was forged. He'd built his entire empire on making sure no one could need him, and he could need no one. And yet, his hand moved before his mind caught up. He stood, the chair scraping against Italian marble. His fingers were already reaching for his coat, his keys, his gun. Muscle memory from 1,000 exits, 1,000 emergencies. But this wasn't business. This wasn't one of his men in trouble or a deal gone sideways. This was Beatrice. He didn't know why that mattered. Didn't want to examine the way her name had lodged itself somewhere behind his ribs over the past 8 months. The way he'd started noticing things. How she hummed old gospel songs while she worked. How she always left a single jasmine flower in a vase by his bedside. How her hands trembled slightly when he entered a room she was cleaning, and how she never quite met his eyes. The elevator ride down felt endless. His driver, stationed in the lobby, straightened when he saw Geraldo approach. Sir, I'm driving myself. The man's eyebrows lifted a fraction, the only sign of surprise he'd allow, but he handed over keys to the black Audi without a word. Geraldo slid behind the wheel and pulled into the empty downtown streets, his knuckles white against the leather steering wheel. This is insane, a voice in his head whispered. You don't answer personal calls. You don't rush across the city at midnight for your housekeeper. You don't. But he was already halfway to her address. Beatrice Roberts sat on the floor of her studio apartment with her back against the couch, her phone clutched in one hand and an empty wine glass dangling from the other. The bottle, her second, lay sideways on the carpet beside her, a small dark stain spreading where the last drops had spilled. She was going to throw up. Or cry. Or both. "What did I do?" she whispered to the ceiling, her voice thick and slurred. "What did I do?" She'd sent the text 17 minutes ago. 17 minutes of staring at the screen, watching the little delivered confirmation mock her, waiting for the 3 dots that would mean he was typing a response. Nothing. Of course nothing. Why would Geraldo Jasper, the man who owned half the city's underground and the other half's loyalty, respond to a drunk text from the woman who scrubbed his toilets? She was invisible to him. A fixture. As unremarkable as the jasmine flowers she left by his bed, hoping maybe one day he'd notice, maybe one day he'd ask why she chose that particular bloom. He never did. Beatrice dropped her phone on the carpet and pressed the heels of her palms against her eyes. The room spun gently, a lazy tilt that matched the chaos in her chest. She'd had a terrible day. No, a terrible month. Her mother's medical bills were piling up. Her brother was asking for money she didn't have. And tonight, she'd come home to an eviction notice taped to her door, red letters screaming that she had 30 days to come up with 3 months back rent or lose the only place she'd ever called home. So she'd opened the wine. And then the second bottle. And somewhere between the bottom of the first glass and the haze of the sixth, she'd thought about Geraldo, how safe she felt in his, how the mornings she spent there were the only time the world felt quiet, how sometimes she'd catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't name. And she'd texted him, "I need you now." God, what had she been thinking? That he'd care? That a man like him would drop everything for a woman like her? She was black, broke, and barely keeping her head above water. He was power-wrapped in expensive suits and dangerous secrets. They existed in different universes. A knock shattered the silence. Beatrice's head snapped up. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Another knock. Firmer this time. Deliberate. She scrambled to her feet, swaying as the room tilted violently. The wine glass slipped from her fingers and rolled across the carpet. She stumbled to the door, pressed her eye against the peephole, and froze. Geraldo Jasper stood in the hallway of her 4th-floor walk-up, still wearing the black suit from earlier, his jaw tight and his dark eyes fixed on her door like he could see straight through it. He'd come. Beatrice's hand went to the deadbolt. Stopped. Her pulse roared in her ears. She was drunk. Her apartment was a mess. She was a mess, wearing old sweatpants and a faded Howard University t-shirt, her braids piled in a lopsided bun, mascara probably smudged under her eyes. He knocked again. "Beatrice." His voice was low, controlled. "I know you're there. Open the door." Her fingers fumbled with the lock. The deadbolt clicked. The chain rattled. And then she was pulling the door open, and there he was, 6 feet of controlled danger and sharp edges, standing in her doorway like he belonged there. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Beatrice saw something flicker across his face, surprise, maybe, or concern, before the mask of control slid back into place. Geraldo saw the wine bottles, the smudged makeup, the way she gripped the doorframe to stay upright. "You came," she whispered. His jaw tightened. "You texted." And in that instant, with a hallway light casting shadows across his face and her heart cracking open in her chest, everything they'd both been running from stood between them, impossible to ignore. Geraldo stepped inside without waiting for permission. The apartment was smaller than his walk-in closet, a studio with exposed brick walls, a kitchenette that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s, and furniture that was clean but worn. The air smelled like wine and jasmine. There was a small diffuser on the windowsill, the same scent she left in his penthouse. Beatrice stumbled backward as he entered, her shoulder hitting the doorframe. She steadied herself, then pushed the door closed with more force than necessary. The click of the lock echoed in the tiny space. "You shouldn't have come," she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. Geraldo turned to face her fully. Up close, she looked wrecked, beautiful and wrecked. Her eyes were glassy, rimmed red like she'd been crying before the wine took the edge off. There was a vulnerability in her expression that made something in his chest constrict painfully. "Then why did you text me?" His voice came out harder than he intended. She flinched. "I don't know. I was drunk. I am drunk." She laughed, a bitter sound that didn't reach her eyes. "You should go. Forget I said anything. Forget you were even here. Beatrice." "No." She held up a hand, swaying slightly. "This was a mistake. You're my employer, Mr. Jasper. I clean your house. That's all this is. That's all it's supposed to be. Is that what you think?" The question came out before he could stop it. Her eyes snapped to his. For a moment, the alcohol-induced haze cleared, and he saw something raw and honest staring back at him. Fear. Longing. Hope she was trying desperately to kill. "What else could it be?" she whispered. Geraldo took a step closer. She didn't move away. The space between them felt electric, charged with 8 months of careful distance and stolen glances and words neither of them had dared to speak. "You left jasmine flowers by my bed," he said quietly. "Every time you came." "Why?" Beatrice blinked, caught off guard. Her lips parted, then closed. She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." "Why?" The word burst out of her, loud and desperate. "Why does it matter? Why are you here, Geraldo? You don't do this. You don't come running when people call. You don't." Her voice broke. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling over. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands came up to her shoulders, steadying her, and the contact sent a shock through both of them. She was warm and trembling beneath his palms, and he realized with sudden clarity that he'd never touched her before. Not once in 8 months. He'd kept that boundary sacred, a line he refused to cross because crossing it would mean admitting something he wasn't ready to face. Beatrice. Her name sounded different in his mouth when it wasn't just a professional acknowledgement. "Look at me." She raised her eyes slowly. Tears streaked down her brown cheeks, catching the dim light from the lamp in the corner. She looked young and exhausted and so achingly honest that it hurt to hold her gaze. "I'm here," he said, "because you asked me to be." "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is." His thumbs moved in small circles against her shoulders, a gesture he didn't consciously decide to make. "I don't answer personal calls. Ever. I have rules, Beatrice. Rules that have kept me alive, kept me in control, kept me from—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "From what?" she pressed, her voice barely above a whisper. "From this." The admission cost him something. He saw her register it, saw understanding dawn in her eyes. "You're scared," she said, and it wasn't a question. His hands dropped from her shoulders. He took a step back, needing distance, needing the armor he felt slipping away. "I'm not scared of anything." "Liar." She said it softly, without malice, like she was stating a simple fact. The wine had loosened her tongue, stripped away whatever filter she normally kept in place. "You're terrified. I see it every time you walk into a room I'm in. You look at me like I'm something dangerous." "You are." The words came out rough, unguarded. Beatrice's breath hitched. "How?" Geraldo dragged a hand through his hair, a gesture that betrayed his carefully maintained composure. When he spoke again, his voice was low, almost confessional. "Because you make me want things I can't afford to want." The silence that followed was deafening. Beatrice stared at him, lips parted, eyes wide. The confession hung between them like a live wire, dangerous and impossible to take back. "What things?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. He looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd moved through his like a quiet melody for 8 months, who'd left flowers she thought he never noticed, who'd sent him a text that broke every rule because she needed him and didn't know who else to call. "Soft things," he said. "Safe things. Normal things. Things that don't exist in my world." "What if I told you," Beatrice said, taking a shaky step toward him, "that I don't need soft or safe? What if I told you I just need real?" Geraldo's hands curled into fists at his sides. Everything in him screamed to leave, to put the armor back on, to walk out and pretend this conversation never happened. But his feet stayed rooted to her worn carpet. "Why did you text me tonight?" he asked instead. "The truth." She looked down at her bare feet, her shoulders sagging. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet he had to strain to hear it. "Because I was falling apart, and you were the only person I wanted to see. Because I've spent 8 months watching you from the edges of your life, and I'm tired of being invisible. Because—" her voice broke. "Because I needed you and I thought maybe, just maybe you might need me too." The vulnerability in her words hit him like a physical blow. He'd spent years building walls, controlling every variable, making sure no one could get close enough to hurt him. And here was this woman, his housekeeper, someone who had every reason to keep her distance, offering him the one thing he'd convinced himself he didn't want. Connection. "You're drunk," he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "I know." She lifted her eyes to his. "But I mean every word. I'll probably regret this in the morning, but right now, I don't care. I'm so tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel." "And what do you feel?" He needed to hear her say it, needed the words spoken aloud even though he knew it would make everything infinitely more complicated. Beatrice took a breath, steadying herself. "Safe. When I'm in your space, when I'm near you, I feel safe. Even though you're dangerous, even though you could destroy me with a word, I feel safer with you than I've ever felt with anyone." Something in Geraldo's chest cracked open. He'd built an empire on fear and respect, on making sure people kept their distance. And this woman, who should be terrified of him, felt safe in his presence. "You shouldn't," he said roughly. "Feel safe with me. I'm not a good man, Beatrice. I never said you were good." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the wine on her breath mixed with jasmine. "I said you made me feel safe. There's a difference. Have you ever told someone the truth you've been hiding, knowing it could change everything? What would you have done in Beatrice's position? Stayed silent or taken the risk? Drop your thoughts in the comments below." "This is a bad idea," Geraldo said, but he didn't move away. "Probably." Beatrice swayed slightly, and his hand shot out instinctively to steady her elbow. The contact sent electricity up his arm. "But I'm tired of good ideas. Good ideas kept me quiet for 8 months. Good ideas had me leaving flowers you never noticed." "I noticed." The admission was quiet, almost reluctant. Her eyes widened. "You did. Every single one." He paused, his thumb unconsciously tracing circles on the inside of her elbow. "Jasmine. Your name means blessed in Latin. And jasmine means love and purity. I looked it up after the 3rd time you left one." Beatrice's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they looked different. Less despair, more disbelief. "You looked it up?" "I told myself it was curiosity. That it didn't mean anything." His voice dropped. "I was lying to myself." "Why?" she asked, and the single word carried the weight of 8 months of questions. "Why lie? Why keep the distance? Why pretend you don't?" she stopped, unable to finish. Because men like me don't get happy endings. He said it like a fact, like something carved in stone. We get power and money and respect, but we don't get soft things. We don't get love. And we definitely don't get women like you. Women like me? Beatrice pulled back slightly, hurt flashing across her face. What does that mean? Honest. Kang. Untouched by the darkness. He gestured vaguely at her apartment, at her, at the space between them. You work for me, but you're not part of my world. You're separate from it. Clean. I'm not clean, she said, anger bleeding into her voice now, cutting through the wine haze. I'm broke, Geraldo. I got an eviction notice today. My mother's sick and I can't afford her medicine. My brother's in trouble and I don't have the money to help him. I work 3 jobs and I'm still drowning. So don't put me on some pedestal like I'm some innocent thing you'll corrupt. I'm just surviving, same as you. The raw honesty in her words stripped away another layer of his defenses. She wasn't some fragile thing that needed protecting. She was fighting her own battles, carrying her own scars. The eviction notice, he said, his mind already calculating. How much? No. She stepped back, shaking her head. That's not why I texted you. I'm not asking you for money. Then what are you asking for? Beatrice looked at him, really looked at him, and in her eyes he saw the same thing he felt, a desperate, terrifying want for something neither of them knew how to name. I don't know, she whispered. I just knew I needed you here. That's all. Geraldo stood in her tiny apartment. This woman he'd spent 8 months trying not to see, staring at him with tears in her eyes and truth on her lips, and felt the last of his control slipping away. He should leave. Walk out. Go back to his penthouse and his bourbon and his carefully controlled world. Instead, he asked, Do you have coffee? Beatrice blinked, thrown by the question. What? Coffee. You're drunk. You need to sober up. He moved past her toward the small kitchenette, needing something to do with his hands, needing to feel useful in a way that didn't involve money or power or violence. We need to talk, and I need you coherent for it. You're staying. The disbelief in her voice was palpable. He looked back at her over his shoulder. This woman who'd broken all his rules with 3 words and a text message. Yeah, Beatrice. I'm staying. And as he watched hope bloom across her tear-stained face, Geraldo Jasper realized he'd just made the most dangerous decision of his life. The coffee maker sputtered and hissed, filling the small apartment with the smell of cheap grounds and steam. Geraldo watched it drip with an intensity usually reserved for business negotiations, his shoulders tight beneath his suit jacket. He'd removed his cufflinks and rolled his sleeves to his elbows, a concession to the cramped heat of her apartment, or maybe to the strange intimacy of the moment. Beatrice sat on the couch behind him, her knees pulled to her chest, watching him move through her kitchen like he belonged there. It was surreal. Geraldo Jasper, the man whose name made grown men nervous, searching through her cabinets for mugs like this was normal. Like powerful men showed up at their housekeepers' apartments after midnight all the time. Top shelf on the left, she said quietly when he opened the wrong cabinet. He found 2 mismatched mugs. One said, Howard University in faded letters. The other had a chipped handle and a cartoon cat. He poured coffee into both, black, and carried them to where she sat. Cream? Sugar? He asked. Black is fine. She accepted the mug, wrapping both hands around it even though the ceramic was almost too hot to hold. The burn felt grounding, real. Proof this wasn't some wine-soaked hallucination. Geraldo settled into the armchair across from her, the furniture creaking under his weight. It was meant for someone smaller, less solid. He looked out of place surrounded by her second-hand things, his expensive watch catching the lamplight, his tailored suit a stark contrast to her worn furniture. They drank in silence for a moment. Beatrice felt the coffee cutting through the wine fog, sharpening the edges of the world, making everything too vivid. The embarrassment was creeping back in now. What had she done? What had she said? "You went to Howard," Geraldo said, nodding toward her mug. She nodded. "Got a scholarship. Full ride for 2 years. Then my dad died and I had to drop out to help with bills." She said it matter-of-factly, like it was ancient history instead of a wound that still ached. "Never finished." "What were you studying?" "English literature. I wanted to teach." She laughed softly, without humor. "Stupid dream." "It's not stupid. It is when you're 28 and cleaning houses for a living." The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. She took another sip of coffee, using it as a shield. Geraldo leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the mug balanced between his hands. "You're a good writer?" "I was." She paused. "I am. I don't know. I haven't written anything real in years. Just grocery lists and rent checks I can't cash." "Why not?" The question hung there, simple and impossible. Beatrice looked at him, really looked at this man who'd inserted himself into her crisis without permission, who was asking questions no one else ever bothered to ask. "Because hoping for things hurts too much," she said finally. "It's easier to just survive. Get through the day. Not want anything more than what you can reach." Geraldo's jaw tightened. "I know that feeling." "Do you?" The challenge in her voice was gentle but real. "You own half this city. You have more money than I'll see in 10 lifetimes. What do you know about making yourself smaller so life doesn't hurt as much?" Instead of anger, something like recognition crossed his face. He set his mug down on the coffee table, on top of the eviction notice she'd left there. His eyes caught on the red letters. He didn't comment. "I know," he said slowly, "what it's like to want something so badly it scares you. To see it right in front of you and know that reaching for it could destroy everything you've built." Beatrice's heart stuttered. "What do you want?" He looked at her then, and the rawness in his expression stole her breath. "That's a dangerous question." "I'm feeling dangerous tonight." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I noticed." He paused, seemed to be weighing something. "You want to know why I really came here?" "Yes." "Because when I saw your text, I was sitting in my office thinking about how empty it felt. How empty everything feels lately." He dragged a hand through his dark hair, disrupting its perfect style. "I have everything I ever fought for. Money, power, respect. And I sit in that penthouse every night and feel absolutely nothing." "Until?" she prompted softly. "Until you." The confession landed between them like a stone in still water. "You started working for me 8 months ago, and suddenly I had a reason to come home. I'd find excuses to be there when you were. I'd notice what you touched, what you moved, what you left behind. Those damn flowers." Beatrice felt tears prickling again, but she blinked them back. "I thought I was invisible to you. I needed you to be invisible." His voice roughened. "Because acknowledging you meant acknowledging that I wanted something I couldn't control. I've built my entire life on Beatrice. Every decision is calculated. Every risk measured. And then you'd hum those gospel songs while you cleaned, and I'd feel something I haven't felt in 15 years. "What?" "Peace." The word came out quiet, almost ashamed. "You made my space feel peaceful. And that terrified me." She set her mug down with shaking hands. "Why terrified?" Geraldo stood, too restless to sit anymore. He moved to her small window, looking out at the street below, a view of fire escapes and broken streetlights, nothing like the city sprawl he commanded from his penthouse. My father was a violent man, he said to the window. He built his empire on fear and blood, and he taught me that caring about anything made you weak. My mother, he stopped, his shoulders rigid. He killed her when I was 17. Beat her to death in our kitchen because she tried to leave him. Beatrice's hand flew to her mouth. Geraldo. I was there. His voice was flat now, emotionless in that way that meant the emotion was too big to express. I heard it happen. I was in the next room, and I didn't stop it. I was too scared. Too weak. You were a child. I was old enough. He turned to face her, and she saw the guilt carved into every line of his face. After she died, I swore I'd never be weak again. Never let anyone close enough to hurt me. Never need anyone. I took over his business, cleaned it up, and made it profitable. Made it legitimate on the surface at least. And I survived by not feeling anything. That's not surviving, Beatrice said gently. That's just existing. Maybe. He crossed back to the chair but didn't sit, standing over her instead. But it kept me alive. And then you showed up with your quiet kindness and your jasmine flowers, and suddenly existing didn't feel like enough anymore. Beatrice stood, too, needing to close the distance between them. They were inches apart now, close enough that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. So what changed tonight? She asked. Why break your rule? Because, he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, when I saw your text, all I could think was that you needed me. No one's needed me, not like that. Since my mother. Everyone wants something from me. My money, my protection, my influence. But you just needed me. And I couldn't not come. A tear slipped down Beatrice's cheek. I do need you. I don't know why, I don't know what that means, but I do. And it scares me too. Why? Because you could ruin me. She said it plainly, honestly. One word from you and I lose my job. One bad day and you could make my life hell. The power imbalance here is, she gestured helplessly between them. You're my employer, Geraldo. You're dangerous and powerful and so far above me. Don't. The word came out sharp. He reached for her without thinking, his hands framing her face, tilting it up so she had to look at him. Don't do that. Don't make yourself small. You texted me because somewhere inside you knew I'd come. You knew I'd show up. That means you see something in me worth trusting. I do, she whispered. But that doesn't change reality. Then maybe reality needs to change. His thumbs brushed away her tears, the gesture achingly tender from a man whose hands were known for violence. I don't know what this is, Beatrice. I don't know how to do this, whatever this is. But I know I'm tired of pretending I don't feel it. Feel what? He searched her face, and she saw him warring with himself. Years of control against one moment of honesty. Finally, he said, like I've been waiting for you my whole life and didn't even know it. The words hung in the air between them, too big and too true to take back. Beatrice felt her heart hammering against her ribs, felt the coffee and adrenaline sharpening everything into painful clarity. I'm still drunk, she said, even though the fog had mostly cleared. I don't want you to say things you'll regret when I'm sober. I'm not saying anything I don't mean. His hands were still on her face, warm and steady. But you're right. You need to be clear-headed for this conversation. For whatever happens next. What will happen next? Geraldo let his hands drop slowly, stepping back to give her space. The loss of his touch felt like cold water. You drink more coffee. You sober up. And we talk, really talk about what we both want. And if what we want is impossible, then at least we'll know. He moved back to the chair, putting deliberate distance between them. But I'm not leaving, Beatrice. Not until we figure this out. She sank back onto the couch, pulling a threadbare blanket around her shoulders. Outside, a siren wailed past. Inside, two people sat in uncomfortable silence, circling around the truth they'd finally started to name. "Tell me something else," Beatrice said after a moment. "Something real. I want to know you. Not the boss, not the man everyone fears. You." Geraldo considered her request, his expression unreadable. Then quietly, "I've been alone so long I forgot what it felt like to want company. Until Thursday mornings." "Thursday mornings?" "When you come to the penthouse. I started scheduling my meetings later so I could be there. Just to hear someone else in the space. Just to not feel so goddamn alone." Beatrice felt something crack open in her chest. Here was this powerful, dangerous man admitting he'd rearranged his life around her cleaning schedule just to feel less lonely. It was the saddest, most human thing she'd ever heard. "I started coming early," she confessed. "I'd get there at 6:30 instead of 7, just to have more time in your space before you woke up. It felt like the only place in the world I could breathe." They looked at each other across the small room. Two people who'd been dancing around each other for 8 months, finally admitting the truth. "We're a mess," Geraldo said, but there was something almost like warmth in his voice. "Yeah," Beatrice agreed. "We really are." And somehow in that moment, it felt like the most honest thing either of them had said all night. The coffee ran out around 1:30 in the morning. Beatrice stood at the kitchenette, staring at the empty pot like it was a problem she could solve through sheer willpower. Her head felt clearer now, mostly, but the exhaustion was creeping in, heavy and bone-deep. The kind of tiredness that came from crying and confessing and holding your heart outside your body for too long. "I can make more," she said, even though she wasn't sure she had any grounds left. "Don't." Geraldo's voice came from behind her. He'd moved so quietly she hadn't heard him approach. "You need to sleep." "I'm fine. You're swaying on your feet." She gripped the counter to prove him wrong, but the movement only made her sway more. A hand touched her elbow, steady, warm, and she let him guide her away from the stove. "Come on," he said softly. "Sit down before you fall down." Beatrice let him lead her back to the couch. The moment she sank into the cushions, the exhaustion hit her like a wave. Her eyes burned. Her limbs felt like lead. She'd been running on adrenaline and wine for hours, and now both were abandoning her. "You should go home," she mumbled, even as her eyes drifted closed. "It's late. You have important things. In the morning. Nothing more important than this." She forced her eyes open to look at him. He'd settled back into the armchair, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe. Or something softer that she was too tired to name. "You can't stay here all night," she said. "Why not?" "Because." She searched for a reason that made sense. "Because it's weird. Because people will talk if they find out. Because." "Beatrice." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "No one's going to find out. And even if they did, I don't care." "You should care. Your reputation." "My reputation is built on fear and blood money. I think I can survive people knowing I spent the night making sure my housekeeper was okay." He paused. "Besides, you texted me. I need you now. What kind of man would I be if I just left?" The sincerity in his voice undid something in her. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, suddenly feeling vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with the wine. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted quietly. "Do what?" "This. Whatever this is. I don't know how to be around you when we're not. When it's not professional. I don't know what the rules are." Geraldo was quiet for a moment. Then he stood, shrugged off his suit jacket, and draped it over the back of the chair. He crossed to the couch and instead of sitting beside her, lowered himself to the floor in front of her, his back against the coffee table. The position put them almost at eye level. "There are no rules," he said. "That's the point. We're figuring this out as we go." Beatrice looked down at him. This powerful man sitting on her worn carpet like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're going to wrinkle your pants." "I'll survive." A small laugh escaped her, surprising them both. "I can't believe you're here. In my apartment. Sitting on my floor. This is insane." "Yeah." He smiled slightly, and it transformed his whole face. She'd never seen him smile before. "Not really." "It is." "What are we doing, Geraldo?" The smile faded. He reached up, and after a moment's hesitation, took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused in ways that spoke of violence she tried not to think about. But his touch was gentle. "Honestly? I have no idea." His thumb traced slow circles on the back of her hand. "I've orchestrated million-dollar deals. Negotiated with men who'd kill me without blinking. But this? I'm completely out of my depth." "Good," she whispered. "Me too." They sat like that for a while. Her on the couch, him on the floor, their hands linked in the space between. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It felt like breathing room, like the eye of a storm where they could both just exist without explanations or expectations. "Can I ask you something?" Beatrice said eventually. "Anything." "Why Jasmine? You said you looked it up. But why did it matter enough to look up in the first place?" Geraldo's jaw tightened. He looked down at their joined hands, watching his thumb move against her skin. "Because the first time you left one, I came home and the whole penthouse smelled like it. Like my mother's garden. Before everything went to hell, she used to grow jasmine on our balcony. I hadn't thought about that in 15 years, and then suddenly it was everywhere." Beatrice's breath caught. "I didn't know. I just thought." "I know. You couldn't have known." He looked up at her. "But when I smelled it, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel since I was 17. I felt safe. In my own home. And I needed to know why you chose that flower. If it meant something. If you meant something." "And did I?" "From day one." The admission was quiet but certain. "I just didn't let myself acknowledge it until tonight." Beatrice felt tears threatening again, but she blinked them back. She'd cried enough for one night. Instead, she squeezed his hand. "I chose Jasmine because of my grandmother," she said. "She raised me after my parents died. Had this tiny garden in Baltimore. Just a fire escape, really, and she grew jasmine there. Said it reminded her of home. Of the South. Before she came north. When she died, I kept a clipping. Planted it in every apartment I've lived in since." She gestured toward the window, where a small jasmine plant sat in a chipped pot. "That's why your penthouse has it. Because it feels like home to me. Like safety." "So we've both been carrying our ghosts," Geraldo said softly. "Yeah, I guess we have." He shifted slightly, his shoulder pressing against her knee. The contact was casual but deliberate, like he was testing boundaries, seeing what she'd allow. She didn't move away. "Tell me about your eviction notice," he said after a moment. Beatrice stiffened. "I told you, I'm not asking you for money." "I know. I'm not offering. I'm just asking." His voice was patient. "You said you got it today. That's why you were drinking." She sighed, exhaustion making her honest. "That and a dozen other things. My mom needs a surgery she can't afford. My brother got in trouble with some guys he owes money to. Nothing compared to what you deal with, probably, but enough to scare him. I've been working 3 jobs and it's still not enough. I'm drowning, Geraldo. And tonight it all just crashed down. What are the other 2 jobs? I waitress at a diner on weekends. And I do data entry for a law firm at night, remote work. She laughed bitterly. I'm so tired I can barely see straight most days. But it's still not enough to keep my head above water. Geraldo was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was careful. What if I told you I wanted to help? I'd say no. Why? Because I need to know this, she gestured between them. Whatever this is, it's not about money. I need to know you're not here because you feel sorry for me or because you think you can fix my problems with your checkbook. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? The question came out more desperate than she intended. Really? Because I sent you a drunk text and you came running. You've stayed for hours. You're sitting on my floor holding my hand. And I don't understand why. Geraldo looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. Because for the first time in 15 years, someone needed me for me. Not my money. Not my connections. Not my muscles. Just me. And I realized sitting in that penthouse that I needed you too. Needed me for what? To remind me I'm still human. His voice roughened. To make me feel something other than empty. To give me a reason to come home isn't just an obligation or habit. Beatrice slid down from the couch to the floor beside him, the blanket pooling around her waist. They sat shoulder to shoulder now, backs against the coffee table, knees drawn up. This is crazy, she whispered. You know that, right? You're a literal crime boss and I'm your housekeeper. This is the plot of a bad romance novel. I've read worse plots. There was a hint of amusement in his voice. You read romance novels? My sister does. Leave them at my place sometimes. I may have skimmed a few. He paused. They all end up happy. The guy gets the girl. Love conquers all. That sort of thing. Life isn't a romance novel. No, he agreed. It's messier. More complicated. The power dynamics are actually fucked up, not just pretend fucked up. And there's no guarantee of a happy ending. Beatrice turned to look at him. So what are we doing? Right now. He met her gaze. We're sitting on your floor at 2 in the morning, being honest with each other. Beyond that, I don't know. But I know I don't want to leave. Not yet. You have to eventually. Eventually it isn't now. She rested her head against his shoulder, a gesture that felt both brave and terrifying. He went still for a moment, then slowly, carefully, put his arm around her. The embrace was tentative, like they were both waiting for the other to pull away. Neither of them did. I'm still scared, Beatrice said into the silence. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of wanting something I can't have. Of getting hurt. She closed her eyes. Of hurting you. You couldn't hurt me. Yes, I could. She said it with certainty. That's what makes this dangerous. You're letting me close enough to do damage. That's not something you do. Geraldo's arm tightened around her slightly. No, it's not. They sat in silence, the weight of confession settling over them like snow. Outside, the city hummed its late-night symphony. Sirens and traffic and the distant thump of music from somewhere below. Inside, 2 people who'd spent months circling each other finally stopped running. Stay, Beatrice said quietly. Just for tonight. I don't want to be alone. I'm not going anywhere. I mean really stay. Not just sitting up all night in that chair. The couch pulls out. It's not much, but… Beatrice. He turned to look at her, his face inches from hers. Are you sure? I'm not asking for anything except your company. She swallowed hard. I just don't want you to leave yet. He studied her face, searching for doubt or fear or ulterior motives. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. I'll stay. And as Beatrice helped him pull out the ancient sofa bed, as they found spare blankets and pillows, as they navigated the strange intimacy of preparing to sleep in the same small space, she realized something fundamental had shifted between them. They'd crossed a line tonight. There was no going back to professional distance, to polite nods and careful boundaries. They'd seen each other, really seen each other, and that kind of exposure changed everything. For better or worse, they were in this now. Whatever this turned out to be. Morning came gray and hesitant through the apartment's single window. Beatrice woke to the sound of water running in the bathroom and the disorienting realization that Geraldo Jasper had spent the night in her apartment. She sat up slowly, her head pounding with dehydration, her mouth tasting like regret and wine. The pull-out couch across the room was empty, sheets tangled, pillow still bearing the indent of his head. Reality crashed back in waves. The text. The confession. His hands on her face. I've been waiting for you my whole life and didn't even know it. Oh God, she whispered, pressing her palms against her eyes. The bathroom door opened. Geraldo emerged in his dress shirt and slacks from last night, the shirt wrinkled and untucked, sleeves still rolled to his elbows. His hair was damp, pushed back from his face. He looked rumpled and human in a way that made her heart stutter. You're awake, he said, his voice still rough with sleep. I'm awake. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, suddenly aware she was in old sweatpants and a t-shirt, her braids a disaster, no makeup to hide behind. I'm sorry. About last night. I shouldn't have. Don't. He crossed to the kitchenette, moving with surprising ease in her space. Don't apologize. Not for being honest. I was drunk. You were. But you meant what you said. It wasn't a question. He was already searching through her cabinets. Coffee. I don't think I have any left. He held up a small bag she'd forgotten existed, half full of grounds. Good enough for a pot. Beatrice watched him move through the motions of making coffee. This man who probably had people to do everything for him, who could buy a coffee shop on a whim, carefully measuring out grounds into her cheap machine. The domesticity of it felt surreal. Did you sleep? She asked. Some. He glanced back at her. You. I don't remember falling asleep. I remember us talking, and then… She trailed off, fragments of conversation coming back to her. His arm around her. Her head on his shoulder. The strange safety of his presence. The coffee maker sputtered to life. Geraldo leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her with an intensity that made her want to hide. We should talk about last night, he said. Should we? Or should we just pretend it didn't happen and go back to normal? Even as she said it, she knew it was impossible. There was no going back. Can you do that? He asked quietly. Pretend. Beatrice looked at him. Really looked at him in the morning light. At the man who'd shown up when she called, who'd stayed when he could have left, who'd held her while she fell apart. No. I can't. Neither can I. The admission hung between them. Geraldo turned back to the coffee, pouring 2 cups. He brought her one, settled into the armchair like he had hours before. The routine of it felt established, comfortable, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. Beatrice sipped the coffee, letting the warmth ground her. What happens now? I don't know. He ran a hand through his damp hair. I've been awake since 5 trying to figure that out. And, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. I don't want to walk away from this. Her heart jumped. From what? From you. From whatever this is. He set his mug down, leaning forward. But I also don't know how to do this without it being complicated. Without the power dynamic being a problem. Without putting you at risk. Risk from what? Geraldo's jaw tightened. Beatrice, you know what I do. You're not stupid. You've been in my home for 8 months. You've seen things, heard things. I've never asked questions. I know. And I've always wondered why. He studied her face. Most people in your position would be curious. Or scared. Or looking for leverage. But you just existed in my space like none of it mattered. Beatrice set her coffee down carefully. It did matter. It does. But I figured everyone has their secrets. Their darkness. You never brought it into space when I was there. You were just you. You don't know me. Maybe not the whole story. But I know enough. She paused, gathering courage. I know you're not your father. The words hit him like a physical blow. She saw it in the way his shoulders went rigid, the way his hands curled into fists on his knees. How? You talk in your sleep. She said it gently. Last night. Before you fully fell asleep. You said something about your mother. About not being him. About being different. Geraldo stood abruptly, moving to the window. His back was to her, shoulders tense. When he spoke, his voice was strained. I killed him. The confession fell into the room like a stone into still water. Beatrice's breath caught. What? My father. I killed him. He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was bleak. 3 years after my mother died. I was 20. He was drunk, threatening one of my sisters. And I just snapped. 20 years of fear and rage, and it all came out at once. Geraldo. I beat him to death with my bare hands. He said it flatly, watching her face for horror, for disgust. Took everything he'd done to my mother, to us, and I gave it back to him. And when it was over, I took his empire and I remade it. Made it cleaner. Less violent. But it's still built on that foundation. On blood and fear. Beatrice stood slowly, moving toward him. He didn't back away, but his whole body was rigid, braced for rejection. That's why you're scared, she said softly. Not caring about someone. Of becoming him. I have his hands. His temper. His capacity for violence. His voice cracked slightly. What if You're not him. She reached up, placed her hand against his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palm. You came when I called. You stayed when you could have left. You sat on my floor and held my hand and made me coffee. Your father never did any of those things, did he? No. Then you're not him. Violence doesn't make you him. What you choose to do with that violence, that's what matters. Geraldo covered her hand with his, pressing it harder against his chest. You should be terrified of me. I know. I'm not. She looked up at him. Maybe I should be. But all I feel when I'm with you is safe. Seen. Like I matter. You do matter. The words came out fierce, urgent. You matter more than you know. Then tell me. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Tell me why. Help me understand what I am to you. He searched her face, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes, the desire to confess battling against years of self-protection. Finally, quietly, he spoke. You're the first person in 15 years who's made me want to be better. Not more powerful. Not richer. Just better. Kinder. Human. His free hand came up to cup her cheek. You walk into my space and you bring light with you. You leave flowers you think I don't notice. You hum songs that sound like hope. And I realized I'd been living in darkness so long I'd forgotten what light looked like. Beatrice felt tears spilling over, but she didn't look away. I'm just a girl cleaning houses to survive. No. His thumb brushed away her tears. You're so much more than that. You're strong and resilient and beautiful and you don't even see it. You've been through hell and you're still kind. Still hopeful. Still brave enough to text a dangerous man and ask him to show up. You did show up. Because I needed to. Because the thought of you hurting and me not being there was unbearable. He leaned his forehead against hers, the gesture achingly intimate. I don't know what this is, Beatrice. I don't know how to navigate it. But I know I can't walk away. I've tried. For 8 months I've tried. And I can't. What if I can't give you what you need? The fear in her voice was raw. What if I'm not enough? What if you're enough? He said it with such certainty that it cut through her spiral. You've always been enough. More than enough. They stood there, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. Outside, the city was waking up, the sound of traffic, of voices, of life continuing. Inside, 2 people stood at a crossroads, trying to figure out which direction led to something real. I need to tell you something, Beatrice said finally. Geraldo pulled back slightly to look at her. Okay. She took a breath, steadying herself. The first time I saw you, the interview for the job, I was terrified. You were this powerful, untouchable man, and I was just desperate for work. But then you asked me about my favorite book. Remember? A faint smile touched his lips. Toni Morrison. Beloved. You remembered. I remember everything about that day. His hand was still on her cheek, warm and steady. You were wearing a blue dress. You kept fidgeting with your ring. And when you talked about that book, your whole face lit up. Like you forgot to be scared for a minute. Beatrice's chest ached. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Because you saw me. Really saw me. And I thought maybe if I worked for you I could see you too. Behind all the walls and the danger. I could see the person underneath. And did you? Yes. Every Thursday morning. Every jasmine flower I left. Every moment I spent in your space. She paused. I fell for you slowly, Geraldo. So slowly I didn't even notice it happening until I was already gone. His breath hitched. Beatrice. I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly. I'm not expecting declarations or promises. I just needed you to know. That last night, when I texted you, it wasn't just loneliness or whine. It was 8 months of feeling what I feel finally becoming too much to hold inside. Geraldo pulled her into his arms, wrapping her in an embrace that felt like safety and surrender all at once. She felt his heart beating against her ear, felt the tension in his muscles, felt the way he held her like she was something precious he was afraid to break. I don't know how to do this, he said into her hair. I don't know how to be what you need. Just be honest. Be here. Be you. She pulled back to look at him. That's all I'm asking. That's everything. I know. They stood in her tiny apartment as morning light filled the space. 2 people who'd spent the night unraveling years of protection and pretense. The coffee had gone cold. The world outside was moving on. But here, in this moment, they were suspended between what was and what could be. I should probably go, Geraldo said, though he made no move to release her. I have meetings. People will be looking for me. Okay. But I'm coming back. He said it like a promise, like a vow. Tonight. Tomorrow. Whenever you need me. I'm coming back. Why? He smiled slightly, a real smile that transformed his whole face. Because you're my jasmine flower, Beatrice. You're the thing that makes my space feel like home. And I'm done pretending I don't need that. Beatrice stood on her toes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Brave and terrifying and exactly what the moment needed. When she pulled back, she saw something like wonder in his eyes. Go, she said softly. Before we make this more complicated. Too late for that. I know. He grabbed his jacket, his shoes, his phone. At the door he paused, turned back to look at her one more time. Beatrice. Yeah. Thank you. For texting. For letting me stay. For seeing me. Thank you for showing up. And then he was gone, leaving behind the scent of jasmine and the echo of confessions that changed everything. 3 days passed like a held breath. Geraldo didn't just come back. He wove himself into the fabric of Beatrice's life in ways that felt both natural and impossible. Thursday morning, he showed up at her apartment with groceries and cooked her breakfast while she got ready for work. Friday night, he appeared after her diner shift with takeout and listened to her complain about difficult customers. Saturday, he sent a car to drive her to her data entry job, texted her throughout the night, and was waiting outside when her shift ended at 3 a.m. You don't have to do this, Beatrice said as she slid into his car that night, exhausted and overwhelmed. I know. He handed her coffee, cream, 2 sugars, exactly how she liked it even though she'd never told him. I want to. They drove through empty streets, the city sleeping around them. Beatrice sipped her coffee and stole glances at him. This man who commanded empires during the day and showed up for her at 3 in the morning like it was the most natural thing in the world. This is crazy, she said softly. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. She turned in her seat to face him. You realize people are going to notice, right? Your driver. Your staff. Someone's going to figure out that you're spending time with your housekeeper. Let them notice. Geraldo. I mean it. He glanced at her, his expression serious. I don't care what people think. I care about you. About this. The simple declaration made her chest ache. What is this exactly? We haven't really defined it. He was quiet for a moment, navigating a turn. When he spoke, his voice was careful. I don't know what to call it. But I know I think about you constantly. I know I rearrange my schedule to see you. I know when I'm not with you, I'm counting hours until I can be. That sounds like. Don't say it. He pulled the car over suddenly, parking along a deserted street. He turned to face her fully. Don't name it yet. I'm not. I'm not good at this. At feelings. At letting people in. But I'm trying, Beatrice. I'm trying for you. She reached across the console, took his hand. I know you are. And I'm trying too. To believe this is real. That it's not going to disappear. It's real. He brought her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned tender, so at odds with everything she knew about him. I promise you this is real. Sunday, he took her to brunch at a small cafe in a neighborhood where no one knew him. They sat across from each other in a corner booth, and for 2 hours, they were just Geraldo and Beatrice. Not a crime boss and his housekeeper, just 2 people learning from each other. Tell me something nobody knows about you, Beatrice said, stealing a piece of bacon from his plate. I play piano. He said it like a confession. Her eyebrows shot up. You what? My mother taught me. Before everything went bad. I haven't played in years, but I still remember. He paused. There's a piano in the penthouse. 3rd bedroom. I keep it covered. Will you play for me sometime? Maybe. The corner of his mouth lifted. Your turn. Tell me something nobody knows. Beatrice considered, then decided on honesty. I write poetry. Bad poetry, probably. But I fill notebooks with it. Have since I was a kid. I want to read it. Absolutely not. She laughed, shaking her head. It's terrible. Embarrassing. I doubt that. He leaned back, studying her. You have a beautiful way with words. Even when you're just talking. I bet your poetry is stunning. The compliment made her blush. You're biased. Maybe. Doesn't make it less true. They walked through the neighborhood after, hand in hand like it was normal, like the world wouldn't have opinions about a man like him with a woman like her. Beatrice felt lighter than she had in months. Maybe years. The eviction notice was still taped to her door. Her mother still needed surgery. Her brother still owed money to dangerous people. But here now, with Geraldo's hand warm in hers, those problems felt manageable. I could get used to this, she said softly. He squeezed her hand. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. Monday morning shattered everything. Beatrice arrived at the penthouse for her usual cleaning shift to find Geraldo in his office with 3 men she'd never seen before. The tension in the room was palpable. Sharp and dangerous. She should have turned around, should have left, but Geraldo's eyes caught hers through the open door, and something in his expression made her freeze. We'll finish this later, he said to the men. His voice cold and authoritative. The voice of the boss, not the man who'd held her hand yesterday. The men filed out, each one giving her a look that made her skin crawl. When they were gone, Geraldo closed the office door and turned to face her. You shouldn't be here right now, he said. It's Monday. I'm always here on Monday. I know. I forgot. He dragged a hand through his hair, and she saw the stress carved into his features. You need to leave. What's wrong? Nothing you need to worry about. Business. Geraldo. Beatrice, please. His voice sharpened. Just go. Come back Thursday. The dismissal stung. She stood there, wounded and confused, watching this man who'd spent 3 days showing her tenderness suddenly putting walls back up. Fine, she said quietly. I'll go. She made it to the elevator before her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Ask him about the Moretti deal. Ask him what he did to secure it. Her stomach twisted. She should delete it. Should ignore it. Should trust Geraldo. Instead, she turned around. He was still in the office, standing by the window with a drink in his hand despite it being 10 in the morning. He didn't turn when she entered. What's the Moretti deal? She asked. His shoulders went rigid. Who told you about that? Does it matter? Yes. He turned, and the look on his face was dangerous. Who told you? Someone texted me. I don't know who. She held up her phone. They said I should ask you about it. About what you did to secure it. Geraldo's jaw clenched. He crossed to her, took her phone, and read the message. Something dark passed over his face. Antonio. One of my competitors. He's trying to get to me through you. Get to you how? What did you do? Nothing that concerns you. Everything about you concerns me now. The words burst out of her, loud and raw. You spent 3 days making me believe this was real, making me trust you, and now you're shutting me out the second things get complicated? Because this is my world, Beatrice. This is what I do. His voice rose to match hers. I make deals with dangerous people. I threaten. I intimidate. Sometimes I hurt people. And I don't want you anywhere near it. Then what was the point? Tears spilled over. What was the point of all of it? The breakfasts and the hand-holding and the promises? If you're just going to push me away the second your real life interferes. To protect you. I don't need your protection. I need your honesty. She stepped closer, trembling with anger and hurt. Tell me the truth. What did you do? Geraldo stared at her, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes. Finally, his shoulders sagged. The Moretti family was encroaching on my territory, threatening my people. I had two choices: go to war or negotiate. I chose negotiation. And negotiation in my world doesn't look like boardroom meetings and handshakes. It looks like leverage, threats, making sure they understand what happens if they don't comply. He paused, his voice dropping. I found out Moretti's son was stealing from him. I threatened to expose it unless they backed off. It worked. But it also made me enemies. Is that all? His silence was answer enough. What else, Geraldo? When threats didn't work, I reminded them I'm not afraid of violence. I put one of their men in the hospital. He said it flatly. He'll live. But he'll remember. Beatrice felt sick. She knew, intellectually she'd always known, what Geraldo was capable of. But hearing it spoken aloud, seeing the lack of remorse in his eyes, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. And that's who you are, she said quietly. That's the man I'm falling for. Yes. His voice was bleak. That's who I am. And that's why it can't work. I'm trying to be better for you, but I can't stop being who I am. And I won't let you get hurt because of it. So what? You're just going to walk away? After everything? It's for the best. Don't. The word came out sharp, desperate. Don't you dare make this decision for me. Don't pretend you're protecting me when really you're just protecting yourself from having to be vulnerable. The accusation hit its mark. She saw it in the way he flinched. You're scared, she continued, her voice shaking. You're scared that if you let me all the way in, I'll see something that makes me leave. Or worse, I'll stay and you'll have to actually feel something. Actually risk your heart. And that terrifies you more than any business deal or enemy ever could. Beatrice. No. You don't get to Beatrice me right now. Tears streamed down her face. You made me believe. You made me hope. You made me think that maybe, just maybe, I deserve something good. And now you're taking it all back because you're too afraid to finish what you started. I'm trying to keep you safe. I don't want safe. The words echoed in the vast office. I want real. I want honest. I want you. All of you, even the parts that scare me. But if you can't give me that, if you're going to keep one foot out the door, then maybe you're right. Maybe this can't work. She turned to leave, and his voice stopped her. I love you. The words hung in the air, raw and desperate. Beatrice turned slowly. Geraldo stood there, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. This powerful man undone by 3 words. What? I love you, he repeated, quieter this time. I've probably loved you since the first jasmine flower. And that's why I'm scared. Because everyone I've ever loved has been destroyed. My mother. My sisters barely speak to me because they're terrified of my world. And if something happened to you because of me, I couldn't survive it. Beatrice walked back to him, stood directly in front of him. Then don't push me away. Let me choose. Let me decide if the risk is worth it. And if you choose wrong? If you get hurt? Then I get hurt. But at least I'll have chosen it. At least I'll have had you, for however long it lasts. She reached up, cupped his face in her hands. I love you too, Geraldo. And I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. All of you. even the parts that scare me. Do you think love is worth the risk when the odds are stacked against you? Have you ever chosen someone even when logic said you shouldn't? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes the heart knows things the mind can't understand. They stood in the silence that followed, the weight of their confessions settling like snow. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, two people who'd spent their lives protecting themselves finally lowered their weapons. I don't know how to do this, Geraldo said finally. Neither do I. So we figure it out together. Beatrice smiled through her tears. That's what people who love each other do, right? I suppose it is. He pulled her into his arms, and she melted into him. This dangerous, complicated, beautiful man who'd shown up when she called and never really left. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other like they were the only solid things in a shifting world. I'm still going to mess this up, he warned. Probably. And I'm going to call you on it every time. I'm going to try to protect you even when you don't want it. And I'm going to remind you I'm stronger than I look. He pulled back to look at her, brushing tears from her cheeks. We're a disaster. Yeah, she agreed. We really are. I wouldn't have it any other way. This time, when he kissed her, it was different from the tentative touches before. It was a promise and a beginning and a choice they were both making with open eyes. When they finally broke apart, Beatrice was breathless and grinning. So what now? She asked. Now. Geraldo considered. Now I deal with Antonio for trying to use you against me. Now I make some calls and handle my business. And tonight, I take you to dinner. A real date. The kind where I pick you up and open doors and we pretend we're normal people for a few hours. I'd like that. And tomorrow, we figure out the rest. Your eviction notice. Your mother's surgery. Your brother's debt. All of it. Geraldo, I told you. I know. You don't want my money. But you're going to take it anyway, because that's what people who love each other do. They help. They show up. They handle things together. His voice was firm but gentle. You texted me. I need you now. So let me be what you need. In all the ways that matter. Beatrice wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her independence. But looking at his face, at the determination and love written there, she realized that letting him help wasn't weakness. It was trust. It was partnership. It was choosing vulnerability over pride. Okay, she whispered. Okay. 2 weeks later, Beatrice sat at the piano in Geraldo's penthouse, listening to him play. His fingers moved over the keys with surprising grace, coaxing out a melody that sounded like memory and longing and hope all woven together. She'd moved into the penthouse the week before, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because they'd decided that if they were doing this, they were doing it fully. No half measures. No holding back. Her eviction notice was resolved. Her mother had her surgery scheduled. Her brother was in a program Geraldo had quietly arranged, getting clean and learning a trade. The problems that had seemed insurmountable were being handled, piece by piece, together. When the song ended, Geraldo turned to look at her. What are you thinking about? That night, she said. When I sent you that text. How scared I was. How certain I was that you wouldn't come. And now. Now I know better. She moved to sit beside him on the piano bench. Now I know you'll always come when I call. Always, he promised. She leaned her head on his shoulder, breathing in jasmine from the fresh flower she'd placed on the piano that morning. Outside, the sun was setting over the city, painting everything gold. I need you now, she said softly, echoing that first desperate text. Geraldo turned, pulled her close, pressed a kiss to her forehead. I need you too. Always have. Always will. And in that moment, in the space they'd created together, built on honesty and risk and the courage to be vulnerable, Beatrice understood the truth she'd learned that night. Fear was powerful. It could control everything if you let it. But love, real, honest, vulnerable love, was the one thing fear could never touch. It was the thing that made you brave enough to send a text at midnight. Brave enough to open the door. Brave enough to let someone see all of you and trust they'd stay anyway. It was the thing that transformed a mafia boss into a man who played piano and left jasmine flowers by the bedside. It was the thing that turned a housekeeper into a woman who knew her worth and demanded to be seen. "Thank you," Geraldo said quietly. "For what?" "For texting. For needing me. For teaching me that vulnerability isn't weakness." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "For being my jasmine flower." Beatrice kissed him then, soft and slow and full of promise. And when they broke apart, she whispered the truth they'd both learned. Vulnerability is the only thing fear cannot control. Outside, the city glittered. Inside, two people who'd spent their lives running finally stood still, choosing love over fear, connection over safety, truth over protection. And it was enough. It was everything. Sometimes the bravest text you'll ever send is 3 words. "I need you." And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is show up when someone calls, even when everything in you says it's dangerous. Have you ever taken that leap? Has someone ever shown up for you when you needed them most? Drop your story in the comments. And if this story reminded you that vulnerability is strength, hit that subscribe button, because we all need reminders that choosing love is always worth the risk.